Okay, so this is our 3.4 notes continued. This is part 2. So we're going to talk about conditional relative frequencies. As you recall, relative frequencies are percents. But when they're conditional, we don't take it over the actual total. It's going to tell us which total to use. We're going to go by columns or rows, and we might not always use the grand or big total. We have to read the problem to see which total it wants us to use. So looking at the first part of the notes, let's just look here. Conditional is the key word there, and again, relative frequency just means percents. We take a percent. And then we have to look at the rows or columns for the total. That's the bottom of our fraction. It's not going to be the total of people surveyed like our regular relative frequency. When it's conditional, it gets a little tricky. So, again, the ratio, it's a fraction. And we just have to look at what two pieces go in. So let's look at the first learning target here. I can find the conditional relative frequency. So the first thing here, we need to read this example and fill in some numbers. It just says, a school administration asked 100 randomly selected students. So I can see my joint frequencies right here. These are what are called joint, right? Because they have two things in common. This would be 9th graders that like apple juice. This would be 10th graders that like orange juice, and so on. So those are already filled in for us, and it just gave us another information piece. So 100 is our grand total. And then it says we want to find, what we need to do is find and interpret our marginal frequencies. So that's the first part. It just means fill in the table. So what we're going to do is, to find our total here, we just add these three numbers and we get our total. This first one is 44. Now we're going to add the 22, the 9, and the 15. That's going to get us 46. And the way I would double check myself is, I just want to make sure we know 100 people are surveyed. So add these two together and they should come up to the total of the people surveyed. So now again, we're going to just find the marginal frequencies again. So for here, we'll just add these two. The 19 and the 22 gives me 41. 12 and 9 gives me 21. Be sure to use your calculators. 23 and 15 is 38. So again, just to double check yourself, you might want to add all these numbers, 41, 21, and 38, and make sure that it equals 100. That way you know you got your marginal frequencies or your totals correct. Okay? So now again, we're talking about conditional. And that means percent. So you're going to see the other P word that means percent. What is the probability? That means what is the percent? And this is where we have to think about it. It's not just going to be over our 100 total. We're going to read the question and think about it. We also gave you the probability note there, so you know exactly what piece goes on the top and the bottom. But the probability that a randomly selected 9th grade student likes apples. So our total, if you can see here, it says apples over 9th graders. Our bottom number is the total of 9th graders. Just follow that all the way across. Our total of 9th graders is 54. So for this one, that's actually going to be the number we put on the bottom, and it shows us right here. This here actually says the P stands for probability or percent of, and then it wants to know apples over, see the little slash mark, it's just written different, 9th graders. So that's the fraction we're setting up. We already figured out the 9th graders, and now how many liked apples? So we're only looking at the 9th graders and apples. So if I put that arrow over, that was the total of 9th graders, how many liked apples? That is our top number. And again, how we put this in our calculator is 19 divided by 54, is that fraction bar, and that gives you a decimal. So then you times it by 100 to get your percent, and we're just going to round it to the nearest 10. So you would get about 35% because it's 35.1 something. So that's our final answer. When it's asking for a conditional relative frequency, it wants a certain total on the bottom that's different every time, and it wants a percent. So let's look at B. I'm going to erase our work that we did for number 1 just so it doesn't get in the way. Again, we're looking at a different total. Before, when it's just the regular relative frequencies, you're always over this grand total. The conditional ones are different every time. So we got to think about what's our part, what's our total, and it's nice because in these we give it to you. So what is the probability that a randomly selected student in 10th grade, so 10th grade is our total, likes bananas best? So again, here is the little hint for you. The probability or percent, and the top it says banana, I'm going to just write that, over the 10th graders. So again, we're going to look at 10th graders total. That's my bottom number. It tells us right here, but also when we think about it, yeah, out of all the 10th graders, it's asking how many liked bananas best. So we're going to go here, 10th graders, and we're only looking in the 10th grade spot. So we know there was 46 10th graders. And then how many liked bananas? So again, we're just in the 10th grade spot, and it says right here 15. So that's how we found our two numbers. So again, we're going to do 15 divided by 46. That's what we would put in our calculator, times the 100, because if it gives you a decimal, you want to multiply it by 100 to get the percent. So it gives you about 32.6%. You could also say 33% if you round it up. Either one is okay. We're going to do C and D together, and then you're going to try the practice on your own for conditional. So again, pay attention to the little hints that we have at the end. It says, what is the probability that a randomly selected student that likes oranges is in 9th grade? So the total is all the students that liked oranges. So this is where we go. We're going to use a row instead. Randomly selected that liked oranges. So I'm going to go down here, the ones that liked oranges. I follow that down to find my total. So that's going to go on the bottom. And it says it right here. It's going to be 9th graders over oranges. We just have to read the problem to see what specific part there. So, and then in the orange column, so we know we're talking about all the people that liked oranges, and then the part is how many of them were in 9th grade. So that's 12. So again, 12 divided by 21 times 100 would give me 57%, or 57.1. You can round it or keep it at that, it's fine. Okay, and the last one, again, our probability. What is the probability that a randomly selected student that likes apples, students that like apples then is our total. So and here's our hint. It's 10th graders over who likes apples. So, total that likes apples, I'm going to use my green. I'm going to follow that down. This is my total that I'm going to use this time. So it's 41 on the bottom. That is the students that like apples. And then it wants to know how many of them are in 10th grade. So I'm looking at this same piece, but I'm going to look at the 10th grade number to put on top. That's my part. So the last thing, so I have 22 divided by 41. And I'm just putting what I would put in my calculator, times 100. And then that's going to get you about 53.6%. Or we could say 54% if you round it up. Either one is okay. Just remember, this is a percent. And the total changes every time when we're dealing with conditional frequency. So, I already filled in the story problem. You just have to fill out the rest of the chart. And then they're conditional frequencies. So when you read the questions, please look at the little hints and think about what number goes in the top and what goes on the bottom. So this is your work to do after the notes. You're going to do these, and then we're going to check them as a class.